All right, chat, let's talk gameplay update. 7.32D. That's the words I was looking for. So talking about this, interesting things. We've looked through it before. So kind of gonna tell you guys, we've pulled out some highlights, at least for like me. I can't say it might be like overall Dota highlights, but here's like my stuff. So flag bearer creep, bonus gold for allies and range increased by 10. That's pretty good. It reasserts the idea that supports should probably not be leaving the lane, especially for flag bearer creep waves, and it just asserts the importance of the flag bearer creep even more. Interesting that they like doubled down on that, so that's kind of interesting. A lot of this is just bug fixes, so there's not really anything else in here that is relevant. Some of the things I do think are relevant, though, the blade mail buff seems pretty significant. I guess the item has not been performing well, mainly in my opinion because characters like Legion Commander and Axe, these like blink dagger first purchase offlaners have been kind of struggling this patch because of Wraith Pact meta. So this is a buff to those characters. We got a little bit of a Bloodstone nerf, which is the addressing the Lesh issue. Who you see every now and then being a big kind of, big baddie. Not sure if this like completely ruins Lesh. It's a pretty, it's like a 10% or rather a 5% nerf, which is, at the end of the day, kind of a big deal, but who knows. This is my favorite part of this because it helps me as someone who builds these items a lot. Boots of Bearing and Drums, and even Crimson Guard as a Visage player. It seems like they took Wraith Pact and they said, okay, we're going to make Wraith Pact worse. We'll get to that in a second. And we're going to buff the other aura items. So that's pretty cool. Boots of Bearing, reduced cost. Those little things, those little cost reductions actually do end up being kind of a big deal. You get them that much faster. For me, getting drums that much faster is just that much faster that I can get a kill in lane. And it makes rushing drums instead of like going the full Wraith Pact first a big deal. But I don't think that's going to be happening much anymore anyway. So drums first on Visage is way more important, for sure. Okay, this is where things get interesting. So Guardian Greaves, blah, blah. Pipe of Insight is a big deal. 50 extra magical damage being blocked. That's solid. I mean, if you manage to pipe your whole team, that's 250 extra magic damage. It's not happening.
I'll pipe my whole team. Sorry.
What?
I'll pipe my whole team. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
Wow. Okay, moving on. And then Guardian Greaves being like just better as healing. So all these like characters that would maybe buy these already, like Undying, Omni Knight, healing characters that would go into this, having the boosted health regen increased and then reducing the recipe cost seems pretty solid. Who knows? Okay, biggest change, and this is a big change. Wraith Pact is now a physical damage reduction. Physical damage only. Pure damage and magic damage rip right through. So what does this mean? This means that all those characters like Tidehunter, like Visage, all those off-lane Wraith Pact buyers, first off, they have to make a decision now. Wraith Pact is not like the end-all be-all. And Wraith Pact is now very much a who is doing all the damage, who do I need to stop? Because pipe is now like, this is the magic damage blocker. If magic damage is killing your team, you need to go with this. If physical damage is really wrecking your team, and generally speaking, carries are doing physical damage. So Wraith Pact is not like listen, it's still really good, but it does mean that BKB, this is like a subtle BKB buff as well as a pipe buff. It just means BKB is even more valuable as a carry, where like I need a BKB to reduce the magic damage that I'm taking, and hopefully my offlaner has a Wraith Pact so that when the sniper is pinging me or the carry is attacking me, I take less damage from that. But I still think Wraith Pact is really good. I don't know if it's a first buy anymore. We'll see. It's definitely not as big of a team fight, like, juggernaut item. Because it used to just be 30% all damage. Now, theoretically, half the damage you're taking is going to not be reduced. So that's a big deal. But again, it just means pipe is even stronger. So yeah, could be interesting. I mean, listen, buying an item that gives you 30% magic resist seems pretty good. and the amount of health regen it gives you and your team is really good for like sustained pushing. So I don't know, it's a good item already, and I think like quite honestly, Wraith Pact was the for offlaners right now, like at least the ones that could afford to buy it, was the for sure buy this first. Now I think you're going to be thinking about maybe if you're an aura builder buying pipe instead. So who knows? Anyway, hero changes. We're going to gloss over these pretty quickly. There's some stuff that affects some characters we play around here. For example, the Ag's nerf to Broodmother is interesting, although I don't play her that much. The Spiderling vision radius being reduced is actually a high-level Broodmother nerf. Like, that's something that low-level Broodmother players don't do that much. Spawn a bunch of spiders and then send them across the map to scout. Still very doable, but it does mean that I think you cannot get vision of someone like a ranged character who kills your Spiderling before they get in vision. So that's an interesting thing for high-level stuff. Crystal Maiden. We play lots of Crystal Maiden. Her ally mana regen outside of proximity radius has been reduced. So a little bit of a nerf to Crystal Maiden in lane. Kind of interesting. Bramble Maze, Megan's favorite character. Dark Willow getting a little damage update. This is a big buff. This means like leveling Bramble Maze, it like changes a lot. I don't know how many ticks it is, but going from 50 flat to 65, it kind of makes late game support Willow definitely more relevant, I think, anyway. Might be talking to my ass, but who knows? Interesting from Death Prophet, they've nerfed her move speed a couple patches in a row, or at least one patch, because she was very strong before. That move speed turned out to be like really, really impactful because she just stopped showing up in games. So they are changing her up like a little bit. They are making her more tanky with a talent, and she buys BKB, to be clear. So this is interesting. I don't know if Death Prophet was building Wraith Pact, but that might be a direct result of like, here's a character that's buying Wraith Pact that might suffer, so let's buff this. Anyway,
you should never been buying Wraith Pact ever.
That's fair. But Crypt Swarm getting a decent amount of early game damage. So at level 1, in like mid lane, if you're Death Prophet mid lane, this is a pretty big deal. I think this might mean that you one-shot the ranged creep. I actually don't know how much health it has, but that like from 150 to 160 and 75 to 85, that's a big deal. 10 damage on those early levels is really nice. So that's fun. How you doing, Fox? Glimpse mana cost interesting. And Static Storm AoE decrease. So apparently Disruptor is doing really well. Can't relate. Doom got a little buff ski to Doom. Actually, this is the thing. It's not that much of a buff, but it's DPS, so it's actually kind of solid. Early game Scorched Earth might mean a little bit more. It's one of those buffs that's like, yeah, that'll help a little bit. It's not crazy. But sometimes fights are, you know, won and lost in that little amount of time. DK, blah, blah, blah. The Eidolon attack range. This is a huge nerf to Enigma. At least it feels like it. Making it so that leveling your Eidolons scales their attack range. That's about one of the things that, like, they are chasing targets. And being able to micro Eidolons such that, like, you know how when you attack somebody, especially if you're a ranged character, you want to attack them, move. Attack them, move. So that you stay within range, and then you don't sit still and continue, like, letting them, you know, that's how you keep up with them, right? You attack them, you move closer to them. When you know you have your next attack, you click them again. That way you get in more attacks instead of letting them walk away from you. You can't do that really easily with Eidolons. So reducing their attack range is actually a really cool, like, skill-based nerf. I kind of like it a lot. Brimstroke, big old buffs. Napoleon will be quite happy. Per wiki, the ranged creep has 300 HP. That can't possibly be true early. Maybe late game? I don't know. That's weird. But what do I know? Dark Portrait, yeah, because it scales with the game. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, Grimstroke. Inkswell move speed increased. Inkswell is a cool skill, and I think it doesn't get used often because people don't know what they're doing with it. But, you know, that's cool. And then an Ags buff. This is big. Being able to use Dark Portrait on spell immune enemies, that makes this skill really strong, and I think actually makes Ags on Grimstroke less of a late game thing and more of a maybe, like, you actually might want to buy this consistently. Because being able to, like, get a fucking really strong illusion of an enemy hero, like an enemy carry who's BKBing your whole team, yeah, that seems like a good idea. So yeah, that's cool. Keeper, forever dead character. Again, because Wraith Pact got nerfed, interestingly enough, we're seeing a little bit of attention paid to those characters that maybe don't need a buff now that Wraith Pact is nerfed, but Legion gets a little bit of a buff in a talent. Don't know really what that means for everything. Lesh gets nerfed a little bit. Pulse Nova's specific nerf is because there was a trick people were doing to have Pulse Nova tick more often. If you just spam, you basically had to like micromanage like tapping your ult buttons so that you would get more ticks of damage per second than you were meant to. So the 1 second cooldown after it's toggled is purely to prevent people from doing that. And then they decrease the damage. Not a huge amount, 10 across the board, but it's definitely a Lesh nerf. Along with Bloodstone, probably see a little less Lesh. Lion's buff seems actually really good. Damage increased on Earth Spike. That, like, for a character that wants to one-shot you, any amount of damage increase, I feel like, especially at the early levels, and it's quite a bit at early levels, 15 at level 1. Yeah, that seems pretty impactful. MARCI nerf. We all saw this coming, especially after TI. The lifesteal decrease on Sidekick makes all the sense in the world. The rebound nerf, yeah, wow. Cast range decrease at level 1 is a huge nerf. Quite honestly, in our experience playing this game, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger like nerf to a skill's ability. Not only at max rank can you not go as far, but you also like it's like almost half the distance. Like it's big. And the speed of the jump is decreased, so it's more of a skill shot now than just a like guaranteed thing. I'm sure it's not crazy hard to hit that anymore, but MARCI was leveling Sidekick pretty much no matter what role you were playing. It was Sidekick first. Now you have to put levels into Rebound, I think, to get that extra range. So interesting to see how that affects her. It definitely doesn't make her the early game juggernaut in lane anymore. And of course, the Sidekick lifesteal nerf kind of goes hand in hand with that. They're basically both nerfs to Sidekick in a way. Because now, like, can't pick Sidekick, you have to pick Rebound. So MARCI's definitely in a bad spot for that. I think she's still probably pretty good, but you have to be a little more like team-oriented, and she's a very team-oriented seeming character, so. Anyhoozle, Mars is whatever, not a lot. Mystic Stakes faster. Monkey King got a buff. Now cast point, I don't actually know what this means. You see it a lot. It's something to do with how fast you cast things. Megan, do you understand cast point?
What?
Cast point?
Yeah.
What is that? What does that entail? You know the exact like what that means?
Yeah, like so the like literally the where you cast it from.
But it's in time. So what does that mean?
You know when you click on it and you gotta click it and go click. I assume that's what it means.
So it's cast time?
No, let me look it up.
Yeah, I don't
know, but I don't know if I know.
Because they're not saying cast time.
Require casters to spend a certain amount of time before the ability effects are applied. This window is known as the cast point or cast time. Yeah, so it's cast time. Yeah,
so
it's cast time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a huge deal. Is ult going off like 0.2 of a second faster? That's actually a really big deal for Monkey. So that's cool. Monkey buff. Love that. Morphling nerf. Morph Ags nerf, because that was necessary. And then waveform, which is his escape. A little harder to get out. A little longer cooldown. So that's fun. No one cares about these guys. Weird base health regen increase on Ogre Magi. Seems good to me. We got some little weird Pango talent change. Primal Beast, another character that seemed to never want to be not picked or banned at TI. Damage decreased on Onslaught, which I think is appropriate at early levels. You still get 380 at the late levels, but being able to just rush into people and like almost one-hit them because you're casting your trample at the same time was freaking ridiculous. So that's cool. Puck gets a little buff. And also, this is interesting. The run is now canceled if Primal Beast is stunned during it. I noticed this a little bit ago when I stunned Primal Beast in his onslaught, and he kept going. I think that's absurd. But yeah, there you have it. Naga just gets a little more strength. Or sorry, she's getting nerfed actually. But nothing crazy. A little lower strength and lower armor. But a nerf nonetheless. So Pudge, we love a nerf. We love a nerf to Pudge. Happy about that. Cool. Less regen and less of this ridiculous passive spell that. Ogna buff. Here's another big one. Queen of Pain. Probably, and again, our experience. I say this because like I'm not, a Dota scholar. I can talk like I am, but Queen of Pain seemed to be one of the characters that has suffered this patch the most. I think we can maybe all agree on that. I don't know. Either way, it seems like she has been in a really kind of rough spot. Some interesting stuff. Number one, Sonic Wave, if you take the talent at level 20, goes from a 60-second cooldown to a 40-second cooldown. That's a big deal. And then just by default, the over 2-minute cooldown is now down to a minute 30 at max rank. Yeah, her ult is good. It's BKB piercing. It's one of those big team fight ults that seems more impactful than it is, I feel.
No, it is so impactful. Shut up. I'm the most impactful when I go.
Megan will not stand for the Queen of Pain slander.
That's my mom and wife.
but yeah, definitely a big deal. Her being able to break that out at a moment's notice is a big deal because again, being able to hit BKB targets is super good. The more time you waste on someone's BKB, the better. Razor buff, fuck yeah, off the heels of the Arcana. Get the talent that you were taking at level 10. At least most of the guides I read tell you to take the agility increase. And then the shard damage, which is worth looking at. Because Razor's Shard is something that I wasn't buying that often, but I think taking it from Roche was always a positive. Causes Storm Surge to have a chance when attacked to cast, and then always when targeted with a spell to release Forked Lightning that strikes the target and other nearby enemies, dealing damage. So basically, if you're hit with a spell, and this is an interesting, this is did you not buy BKB this game? Because you don't need it. You get the shard, I guess, so that if people are hitting you with spells that are not necessarily disables, maybe they're just damage, you still actually do damage. It's kind of great. I don't know. It definitely seems like a pretty solid buff, but it's different from what it used to be. Or sorry, it's not different. It's just more damage, and it's one of those things that maybe this makes it relevant. I don't know. Razor loves being just in the center of everything with a BKB and a refresher, and just you can't do anything to him because you've sucked all the damage out of the enemy carry, and you're BKBing, so the supports generally can't do much to you. So the shard might be more valuable. I don't know. I'm not sure. Rubik got some base damage, so Rubik can now box you, which is a big deal for him, I think, because his 2 is all about reducing the enemy damage. So maybe he's just better at that. Sand King, blah, blah, blah. Shadow Demon, blah, blah, blah. Shadow Fiend. Interestingly enough, just a talent change. I think he's in kind of a good spot. Despite the fact that he got picked all during the group stages of TI, he stopped getting picked during main stage because I think people realized that he was really counterable because he has no built-in escape. And he's kind of, once you get on top of him, he's in a lot of trouble. Silencer, much needed buff. They buffed the shit out of Arcane Curse before TI, or was it right after TI? Either way, this skill has had its radius reduced, especially at level 1. Love to see it. Snapfire, sneaky little buff. And again, I think this is a big buff because when you buff wave clearing abilities, oftentimes your experience with a wave clearing ability is that you use it and all the creeps have 2 health. Snapfire, when you're ahead, you can full clear waves with Scatterblast. Now you don't have to be ahead. I think you can be like right where the game thinks you should be, and you can just walk up and clear a wave. So I think this is a big buff to Snapfire in the carry role, which I think is still, I think she's still a really good offlaner. I still think the problem Snapfire has is that her ult is so powerful that you need really good setup for it. And stuff like, for example, Chronosphere, or as we discovered the other day, an Oracle route, and just perfectly set up kills where otherwise you would have no chance of killing people under towers, things like that. She's really strong at that. But in the 4 position, I still feel that she steals too much. I feel like she's too greedy. And I kind of feel the same about Hoodwink. Hoodwink gets really good late game at stealing farm and clearing waves, like way ahead of the cores, and I feel like that's actually really bad. Because I don't think Hoodwink can use the money really well, especially in the 4 role, and I think Snapfire is very much the same. Because once BKBs come out, Snapfire feels very unimpactful in fights. And again, like, unless you're teamed up with like a Chronosphere or something like that, it feels like Snapfire's late game is left to be wanting. I feel like really good early game, but late game kind of suffers. So this, I think, is kind of a buff to Snapfire in a way that makes her early game even better, because you can clear waves. But again, it might be a blessing and a curse. Who knows? Shrapnel. We love this. Sniper nerf. The world rejoiced. Sniper nerf. Kappa claps in the chat. Thank God. Mana cost increase on Shrapnel. So all the bad snipers...
Slapping these cheeks.
All these bad... Megan's in a weird place right now. Like,
can
I make a veiled sexual reference with what Andrew's saying? Yes, I can. All right.
What's good? Hello.
We love a mana cost increase on Sniper. I do not think he's buying Bottle in lane. In fact, I'm 100% sure he's not buying Bottle in lane. So making him use more mana in lane sounds great. Snipers might actually have to go for the fucking water rune. God forbid. Get out of my fucking lane, you little bastards. This does not, however, address the fact that Sniper is still CS God, and if you are in a lane with him, there is absolutely nothing you can do. If you are both of equal skill and of sound mind, he will beat you to every single CS because he just does more damage and he does it instantly. Very hard to deal with. So unless you like are committing skills to clearing creeps, you're gonna have a hard time against Sniper. And that has not changed. Shrapnel is still, like the newbie snipers who were shrapneling waves, that annoyance is gone. But that might mean that the snipers who don't level that are more relevant, and therefore Sniper's more annoying. So this could be a stealth buff. It could just be convincing snipers to not be scumbags. Now, the radius decrease, that's a different story. You get out of shrapnel faster. So that means he's technically killing you for less time. You're slowed for less time. That's a good thing. So it is still a Sniper nerf. Nerf Sniper, always. We love it. Storm Spirit has been doing not so great this meta, so they've given him some more mana regen on the backs of, like, you know, the beginning of this update where they nerfed Null Talismans. So, cool. Blah-de-blah. There's some stuff in here. A little bit of a small TA buff. Terrorblade, blah, blah, blah. Interesting little Timbersaw buff to his shard. Tiny, apparently, some character that I have played for the first time recently last night in a game of Diretide. Because, you know, Tiny Fever with that awesome-ass skin. By the way, Fox, it is on sale in the marketplace. It was $30 last I checked. So you were absolutely right. You could have just bought the skin instead of rolling those things. But $30, quite a price point. Anyway, yeah, that's a thing. So good times there. He got nerfed. Tree Volley's cooldown was increased. This was like ridiculously low. I don't think this is going to change much of anything. Maybe carry Tinies who build Ags will be crying, but 2 seconds on a skill that feels like you actually have to, like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is happening multiple times in a team fight. It feels like more of a harassing ability, so I don't think that matters a crazy amount. But Avalanche, radius decreased on Avalanche is a very big deal. It's only at the later levels. Level 1, you're still getting the same. Level 2, it's down by 10, and then it's pretty serious towards the late game. So yeah, that's interesting. We'll see if that ends up mattering a whole lot for Tiny. I don't know what Tiny's like win rate is right now. Undying, really strong in our bracket. Got some changes. His healing has been decreased a little bit on his level 15 talent. And the damage, the zombie damage, has been decreased as well. This is a gross talent, by the way. Like, when you think about his zombies doing 20 extra damage. So this is a nerf to both support and off-lane Undying. So yeah, but it's at level 15. Hasn't changed anything of his early game. Still think Undying's pretty strong. Viper. We've noticed that Viper is annoying. But apparently not annoying enough, because he's been buffed. So his break is now cheaper, and Nosedive, which had a criminally low cast range, is now slightly longer. And then just everything buffed. He gets more magic damage on his, or more magic resist, excuse me, on his level 15 talent. His level 10 talent has more damage per second. So yeah, it's a little tankier, a little tankier for Viper. Again, in a post-Wraith Pact world. Interesting that they're buffing some of these offlaners who maybe wouldn't buy it otherwise. I don't know. Visage, one of the strongest heroes in the patch. Probably still highest win rate, if not close to the top, in the Wraith Pact meta. I don't know if this is the nerf that a lot of people were hoping for with Visage. I'm celebrating because this skill already was on a 60-second cooldown. What's 5 extra seconds going to do? Maybe it'll be relevant. Not sure. A minute between fights is pretty big, and it kind of depends on when Wraith Pact is available. I don't know if you're waiting more time. I think the Wraith Pact cooldown is probably pretty similar. So when you were going in with Wraith Pact and like waiting for that cooldown, I don't think... I think your Gravekeeper's Cloak is up again, is basically what I'm saying. So you were never casting this twice in a fight. This is the shard, by the way. It lets you cast, like, it's a go invincible, go invulnerable thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see it. An interesting Warlock buff. Cool, you know, struggling in this game. Slacks on Panic Watch here as Windranger gets some damage, some mana regen, and an increase to the Wind Run radius. So that's fun. And then last but not least, another character that we have not really spent a lot of time on, but Wraith King's Stun now gets there faster, which, as much as that seems like a buff, you know, sometimes when you're chasing somebody down and they're just walking away, you kind of want it to take a while because you get closer to them while the stun is slowly flying towards them. But in terms of like high skill lobbies where like someone might see you past this and suddenly like use a BKB so you don't get like stunned, it being faster, definitely better. So that's cool. And then apparently skeletons now gain 25 additional movement and attack speed when targeting an enemy affected by Wraithfire Blast. So that's also very interesting. How to get your skeletons to go after someone that you've stunned. I guess you have to summon skeletons and stun and then hope that they go after him. I don't know if they like do that on purpose. I think they just do their own thing. So I don't know. Anyway, there's the patch. That's what's